Hey,
So
Ben.
hi Raj, thanks for being
You?
with me tonight. Thanks for joining me.
Very well. How
I'm
are you
well, thanks.
doing?
How are you? Great, great. Why don't you just introduce yourself, Raj,
Sure,
and
yeah,
the work you
absolutely.
do?
So I am a practicing emergency physician. I also lead a practice of emergency physician and hospital medicine physicians. We have probably about 40 doctors in our group, about 100 people, and we serve two hospitals. So half my time is clinical medicine, and half my time is focusing on general management and trying to improve our business operations.
Great, great. So I met Raj 3 years ago, roughly, at a educational startup called General Assembly. I was a teacher there, teaching Excel classes, data analysis classes, and Raj came along to one of my classes. Maybe Raj, you could just tell me a little bit about what problems you were trying to solve at that stage in your with your business that led you to come and take a
Yes,
data
yeah,
class.
absolutely. I realized that increasingly we needed to make more data-driven decisions, and we didn't really. We're a small company. We don't have an IT department. We don't have an analytics person, and I
Yeah,
had some background in Excel, not a ton, but enough to kind of get around a little bit. And I really just realized I needed a deeper skill set to try to figure out what was going on in terms of our data, in terms of how we were taking a look at it and slicing it and dicing it and trying to. So, one of the big things that we
yeah,
do is in hospital medicine. So, these are the doctors that take care of patients when they're admitted to the hospital. Those physicians are part of our practice. And so, matching the supply of physicians or providers to the patient demand is really critical. And that's critical for the obvious reason, of course, is you want to make sure there are enough providers to meet the clinical need. And when
yeah, of
that gets
course.
out of skew,
Yeah,
there you wind up with a whole host of problems. Obviously, the clinical care isn't as great because people are stretched thin. The patient experience suffers as a result of that. The people get burned out when they're providing, you know, sort of working above certain thresholds. And then you also have turnover. So those were
yeah,
kind of the bigger business challenges. And previously, we had looked at some data points, but we couldn't pull them all together to try to make decisions. And we also weren't able to predict 6 or 12 months into the future, which is where you've been really instrumental in helping us gather all that data and be able to look both back and look forward, which has been really vital.
yeah. It's really interesting, actually. Your problem there, you have the clinical issue that you've talked about, which is really the sort of
Absolutely.
the core issue that your service you're providing. But then to be able to provide that, you need to run your
Yeah,
business
absolutely. And we're a
effectively.
staffing.
So
We all we have
you
is
need to
people.
have those goals
We're
as
a
well.
professional services firm.
Yep.
We don't have a lot of
Yep.
bricks and mortar. Staffing is by far and away our number one expense, and
Yep.
in healthcare margins are pretty thin, and so you have to get staffing just right in order for a business to be able to succeed
Yep.
and continue.
So, Raj, what benefits have you got then from really drilling down into your data and really trying to use that data effectively to help you solve these business problems, this supply and demand problem you've talked about? What are the benefits from an
I'll
investment
tell
in
you
your
the
data?
biggest subjective benefit is much less stress. In that
Well,
I
that's
sort of
as good as
know
benefits. Really.
what is coming down the pike and down in terms of our staffing, in terms of our capabilities. Uh,
Yeah,
our Before I would never really know, and we would either have too much staffing or we would have too little staffing. Neither of which are really great, are
yeah,
good situations to be in. We're now able to look at it at a really granular level, and so if we add part-time coverage,
yeah.
if we bring on a certain number of part-time people, what impact is that going to have? So we've had way lower turnover, and
You've been
turnover is a
talking about as
huge
well.
cost for a business. I mean, some people think
So,
the cost of
yeah, yeah,
replacing, I mean, depending on which industry you're in, I don't know the exact stats for us, but the turnover is maybe twice an average employee's annual salary.
wow, that's
So it's
certainly a problem to
yeah,
yeah, avoid.
you want to retain good people.
So, what were some of the maybe hang-ups you had before you started to sort of invest in data, maybe, or anything that was Was there anything that was preventing you doing this earlier than you did?
Some of it was a willingness to sort of say, this is the right time and we're really going to commit the time and effort. I think data analytics,
right.
Sometimes people think like, oh, we'll start using Excel or some other data tool and it's going to solve all our problems instantaneously. And it really was a process over a few months.
One of the things that needs to be considered is it's an investment. It's a long-term investment. It's not a quick fix.
Yeah, and recently we had, actually last week, we had an issue with some coding, and I needed to take a look at a very large data set. And I went back to our notes in the class, and I pulled out some text stripping formulas and was able to kind of slice and dice things relatively quickly.
No, well, there you go. Yeah, it's really handy. I think if you have that tool belt, available to you, then rather than having to wait to hire a freelancer or wait for your IT department, if you know those basics and those skills yourself, and you can just quickly answer your own questions, you're going to be that much more efficient
as a general manager and as a senior leader in an organization. I think having some understanding of the data and how to kind of really look at it, and what's because sometimes someone will tell you something about a data set, but when you actually get into it and you start looking at it, they could be looking at 2 columns over. That's the wrong data field. And that gives you a totally different picture of what's going on with the business or your problem. And so getting over that fear is really vital.